the huge loss here is not being on the shortlist in the first place.
If we take the Gartner stat, which is 90% of the deals go to the vendors that are on the shortlist, if you're not on the shortlist, you've got 10% chance, and the number of vendors who are not on the shortlist greatly outnumber the ones that are.
This, by the way, is Phil's son, Sam, who has taken his seat whilst Phil has stood up
Yeah.
at the other side. So thanks for that, Sam, and we'll get you on for a full episode, I think.
Okay, yeah.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Demand Decoded. Dan here with you as usual, joined by Phil in the studio. And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing silent shortlisting. And this isn't anything new in B2B, but it's certainly on the rise, and introduction of AI and the kind of changes in B2B buyer journeys and researching and evaluation phases have certainly shifted the journey towards silent shortlisting, and it's having huge impact on the way that we should actually go to market, and especially the way that we measure marketing. So in this episode, we're going to unpack what silent shortlisting is, why it's happening, and how marketing teams can actually rethink budget allocation, resource allocation, so you are actually influencing buying decisions where they matter most.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a new concept in B2B buying by any means. We've known for a long, long time that a lot of the research takes place before buyers reach out and make contact with you, and that they're exposed to brands all the way along their purchase process. But we're going through a transformation now, which is exacerbating this. I think both in terms of its influence and effect, but also the awareness on the marketing side. So it's becoming very, very apparent to marketers that the shortlist is the place to be. And I think it's things like zero-click search, is really helping to, I think, help us grasp the idea that actually not everything we do is measurable, and not everything that is measurable is the best thing to do in order to drive our pipeline. And zero-click search just shows that buyers don't have to come to us anymore to get the information that they would have done previously. AI search and the way that's shaping the buyer behaviour and the research process further, really raising the stakes for understanding their shortlisting behaviour and what it means and how to align yourself to that.
Before we get into the podcast today, here's a quick word from our sponsors, HubSpot. Think about listening to this podcast right now. You're probably multitasking and catching 70, maybe 80% of it. Now flip that and imagine only catching 20%. That'd be pretty crazy, right? Yet most businesses only use 20% of their data. All the important details in call logs, emails, and chats just left floating in digital space. HubSpot gives you access to those insights to help your business grow, because when you know more, you grow more. Visit HubSpot.com to get the full picture today. This is something that, like, silent shortlisting as a term hasn't been around for that long, but it's something that's existed though for a long time. And it refers to the point that buyers are finding brands in dark ways that can't be tracked, can't be attributed, are unheard of, basically. And they form their shortlist of vendors that they already want to buy from, maybe 3 to 4 vendors in their like early research phase, or maybe no research phase at all. It's purely down to brand recognition, brand memory. And the brands that are on those shortlists have been building that like brand recognition up for a long period of time before they ever come into market to purchase. So the point is that they're moving into purchase mode. They're moving into that 5% of the market that are looking to purchase, looking to evaluate solutions, and they already have their shortlist.
Every decision, every purchase is influenced by a great many factors, exposure to brands, ideas, word of mouth, concepts, good and bad, it's just, we're all alert the whole time, receiving signals, and they shape our understanding of, of the world. They shape our understanding of the challenges we face. They shape our understanding of how they can be solved, who solves them, and they form subconscious preferences some of the time for, brands that are just considered to be the solution, the preferred solution to this particular problem. Buyer might not even really be consciously aware of that taking place, but it takes place.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for marketers, the purchase decision-making process does not begin when the buyer moves in market and identifies the need to solve a problem. Doesn't begin when you first make contact with, your marketing message to them. It's already been going on for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And there's a huge amount of variety in terms of what effect that will have on the purchase decision, transactional versus complex, high and low cost, and all that sort of stuff. But the data shows you clearly that buyers come into market with a shortlist. Vendors on the shortlist have an outsized potential to win that deal. And none of the marketing that you do to capture in-market demand is necessarily going to be effective at putting you on that shortlist before they come to talk to vendors of any kind.
Yeah, and then you're fighting an uphill battle, right? The 95-5 rule has been around for some time now, which is, it's kind of like overcompensate. It looks at a broader range than is true, right?
Okay.
The 95% of your market that is not currently in market to buy is just there. That it is what it is. But the 5% of market that is in market to buy now, well, most of them already have their shortlist.
Yes, absolutely, because they've been out of market for however long.
So actually, the available market to those not on a shortlist already is actually incredibly small.
Well, if we take the Gartner stat, which is 90% of the deals go to the vendors that are on the shortlist, if you're not on the shortlist, you've got 10% chance, and the number of vendors who are not on the shortlist greatly outnumber the ones that are. So coming into the purchase process late like that is, well, incredibly hard. You've got to unseat and displace, multiple people who are on a shortlist before you arrive. And it's hard to do that. It's hard to tell people that you've got a, especially in this day and age, a distinctly better solution than the ones that they already think are the go-to, or the best fit for them in this situation.
Yeah, it's an uphill battle.
Yeah,
for sure.
big time. And, it stands to reason. We've seen the performance metrics from the type of channels that get you into the purchase process, as it were, after the fact. The conversion rates are always, pretty low, because you are fighting against those preconceived ideas of who they should be working with.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to overcome.
Yeah. The reality is here that a lot of teams think that the biggest area they're losing in is that they're not converting prospects that are coming to them. They're not converting deals that they're converting into deals, and they're not closing them out. But actually, the huge loss here is not being on the shortlist in the first place.
Yes, because if we analyze what we can, right, to a certain extent, and that's part of the challenge of growth these days. Measurability, not always crystal clear. But if you look at the deals that you create and your win-loss rate, yes, you'll take away one story, but there's a far larger part of the market which is, well, not coming to you at all, or not coming to you in the first place if you're not known well in your category for that type of buyer and you're not on that shortlist. So there'll be deals that completely pass you by, and you never had a chance of winning them or losing them because you were not involved.
Yeah. And this now comes into the strategic shift that's required here, which is going from putting all of your eggs into capturing demand, converting known contacts, converting leads that you're, generating through gated content, etc., and actually turning that around to thinking, how do you best get on that day one shortlist? Like that is a core question that we should be answering.
Yeah, absolutely. focusing on exclusively on capturing demand is kind of, it's counterproductive in a number of ways. One, because it is so exclusively focused on the most competitive part of the market, where you've got to fight against every other vendor, shortlisted or not. But it also tends to restrict what you're doing from from influencing shortlists, from influencing out of market buyers, because you're so over indexed on capturing people where there's intent, when they're already in market, using channels and techniques that are focused on that. And therefore you won't be completely failing to reach and touch buyers who are not in market, but you certainly won't be optimizing around their understanding of your brand if you're focused exclusively on trying to convert, capture, nurture, lead, all those things that produce the measurable data, but don't go out into the world in a way that can build people's preference, mental availability, and trust for you, even long before there's anything trackable or measurable.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's the tracking and measurement which has forced marketers down this route. It's forced marketers to over-index on captured demand channels because they are so often easily measured, easy to report on, easy to demonstrate ROI on. We've spoken numerous times about how Google Ads, PPC in general, is very easy to report on. Like if you have a CRM and you're connected all the way to closed won revenue, there's no excuse really why you shouldn't be able to track return on investment on your Google Ads. And this is ultimately the downfall of like measurability and attribution, because it's like a drug, it's like an addiction, because you can track the numbers so easily, and you can just like alter your spend like to get your desired CPL or whatever it may be and go from there. But it completely misses the fact that actually almost your entire market is never going to that channel in the first place, even if they're in market to buy.
Yeah, measurability is an odd one, isn't it? Because it's so logically attractive to us, but it comes with such caveats and problems. However, what we're talking about, marketing in a way that increases the likelihood of you being on a buyer's shortlist before they come into market it's the less measurable kind of marketing, right? And that is a challenge, because I've certainly encountered many situations where there's marketing going on where measurability isn't present or isn't the focus, but that marketing also doesn't have a clear and direct purpose to it that's correlated with the outcomes. Like doing unmeasurable marketing with no direction or purpose is as bad as doing measurable marketing that isn't really aligned to what drives revenue and pipeline today. The sweet spot is in the middle, really, which is doing unmeasurable marketing with clear purpose that you can logically diagnose why it will bring people into your pipeline eventually, and interface that with the measurable marketing that you do that is correlated with pipeline creation when you track the buyer's purchase journey through the channels that they use. That is the sweet spot. You don't want to lurch from doing everything in a measurable way that produces nothing. No pipeline, no revenue, 0.001% conversion rates, tons of data, no revenue. To the other extreme, which is, well, if I don't measure it, I can just do anything and it'll work right. It's not as easy as that.
This is like, a marketing dilemma, which is so many of the effective things at becoming on that day one shortlist are not measurable in the same way as capturing the in-market buyers that are collating their shortlist. And this is where it's really tricky, right? Because I know from experience that saying we're doing something that's entirely not measurable doesn't fly. If you're being given a budget,
shouldn't fly. It does in some situations, but it shouldn't fly, and it shouldn't be how you operate. I just want to clarify.
Yes. And quite rightly, like if you're being given a budget, to invest in the best areas possible in marketing. Like, you do need to be able to report on that in some way. But I think what we're saying here is that there are better ways than direct attribution to actually identify if your efforts to increase brand awareness, increase like brand recognition, and become on the day one shortlist. Like, you can measure those through pipeline lift, closed won lift, like aggregated ROI, as opposed to trying to get to the micro attribution that's going to tell you exactly what sentence like worked.
You can indeed attempt to measure it later and further down the pipeline. There is a challenge in terms of the lag and the gap, right? That is a real issue.
Sure.
So marketers still need ways to decide what they will do. But my view is that even though there isn't crystal clear measurability around it, there is still, in essence, there is still a funnel, in the sense that groups of buyers, perform somewhat predictable actions and behaviors as they go through the non-linear phases of a purchase process, right? And there can be massive variations in the time duration. 95% of the market is out of market and is so for a long, long time. But nevertheless, you can build a mental model of what that journey looks like and determine where is it logical to spend budget to invest to produce the measurable lift later, to stay on the course. You don't want to be in a situation where you are throwing money at channels and tactics without real confidence that they will reach a sizable portion of your market, have a predictable sort of impact when it's seen or experienced or done. I'm not saying the impact is you suddenly get on the shortlist, but as in, it will be seen by the right people. It will communicate the right thing to them on a channel that they use in the right moment. Those sorts of decisions. You can build that model and work to that, and then aim to see the results in the lift later. It's not the same as having nothing to go by. It's just we have to work that out for ourselves,
which is the job of marketing.
Yeah, exactly.
And we'll go on to some of the things that we think require that change in mindset shortly. But I think all of this comes back to understanding your buyer, understanding your market before you do everything else. So can you enable buyer intelligence through sales discovery calls, through consultation calls, through customer success calls? Can you do market research with Winter? Can you do customer interviews? Anything you can do to gather information about the market you ultimately want to sell to will give you the signals for what to do next. It will identify the channels to spend in, identify the types of content that resonate, identify the mediums that they like to consume content in. All of this information can be revealed in that buyer intelligence, and that should give you the confidence then to go and do those things to ultimately, build that brand association, that connection with your brand over time to become one of the brands on the shortlist.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can, so one of the things we've talked about numerous times is the power of, listening to or analyzing sales calls to get, to discover customer motivation, category entry points, triggers for purchase, their situation and circumstances. I think that is one of the biggest unlocks for marketers going forward, helped and thanks to AI, because essentially it's market research that isn't being, isn't coming at a cost that it sometimes can in order to conduct a piece of market research, but it's ongoing, constantly updated market research into what is effective positioning, what is effective messaging, what are effective channels, triggers, all the things you need to know to build the mental model that is more valuable to you than nearly all of the data and analytics that you can get from the channel-based platforms that you might use to reach them. So that is a huge opportunity and something that everybody should consider.
Yeah, and then that gives you the areas to go and focus on. If you're listening to this right now, you're probably doing what every other B2B marketer is doing, asking, how do I get my brand cited in ChatGPT? How do I show up in Gemini, Perplexity, Claude? And at Blend, we help you do exactly that. We engineer visibility in AI search for B2B companies. We build the content, implement the technical optimization, and track your performance across every major AI platform. So when buyers are researching solutions like yours, your brand gets recommended. We know how to engineer visibility in AI search because we built a framework and proved it on ourselves first. And this took months of experimentation, but in the end it delivered 470 high-value prompt appearances, 80% citation rate across prompts, and 250% more AI-sourced leads. We proved the framework, and now we're starting to roll it out across customers who are seeing similar results. So if you want to dominate AI search in your category, visit blendb2b.com to learn more about our AI search services. If you're enjoying this show, let me recommend another one from the HubSpot podcast network, Billion Dollar Moves, hosted by Sarah Chen Spellings. Sarah sits down with the leaders actually building category-defining businesses and pulls out the strategies and hard lessons that shaped their success. Her recent episode with Taiwan's CEO explores how he's reinventing a 77-year-old family business for modern markets. Whether you're scaling or transforming your own business, there's a lot to learn here. Listen to Billion Dollar Moves wherever you get your podcasts. Do you want to touch on, and I don't know if this is something you can coin here, but we touched on it earlier, which is the frequency and relevance formula, which is like the basis for all of this. If you understand, this formula and you can get it right through whatever channels your buyers use, actually.
Yeah. So if I recall correctly, essentially a large part of what makes a purchase happen is mental availability, right? There are moments when buyers search their mind for who to go to. Maybe top that up with some other information sources, but nevertheless, they rely a lot on simply what they recall when they search their mind, and being in there is what mental availability is. And mental availability is the product of, amongst other things, but, significantly, how frequently you are seen or discovered by that person in their out of market, life, and the effect that those exposures to them have on them. So, and we talked about it being relevance, because if you're exposed to something very frequently and it isn't relevant or interesting or, or thoughtful, pertinent to you, then it's just bothersome. That doesn't create shortlist positions. That just creates like, don't show me this ad type behavior. So you've got to combine relevance across multiple channels, multiple times, multiples with something relevant and interesting and worthwhile, i.e. something to do with problems you solve, category entry points. Because if you hit them frequently with something that's relevant and interesting and meaningful, it will create positive mental availability. You can be remembered for both bad and good reasons, but you want to be remembered well around the things that matter in your category. So I can't remember what the formula we decided settled on was, but frequency and relevance are two of the keys to positive mental availability.
Yeah. I wouldn't actually call it a formula. Okay. What I wrote down here is just things you need, really. Exposure plus meaning plus relevance.
Yeah, it's not, it isn't just enough to target your ICP with ads. Those ads have got to carry a message that creates, that has that effect to create that memory effectively, subconsciously in the mind, and not simply be something that's brushed aside and ignored. So you've got to understand your buyer in order to be able to put those sorts of things together. That's true of content, it's true of events, it's true of ads. Everything you do needs to be contributing positively to mental availability.
Yeah, this comes down to, buyer psychology, human psychology to a certain extent, and I'm absolutely not qualified to be talking about that. There are,
it's quite sort of surprising at times to realize just how much some purchases are not the product of completely rational thought processes, in the sense that, like, not every decision is scrutinized against a set of, defendable metrics, there's a lot of, assumption being made. We've talked about how, people will recommend brands even if they've not used them. Even if they've not used your product or service, you can still be recommended to others if you have good mental availability, positive connection with your category, and recall in the minds of people that are in that, audience.
Yeah.
So it's just mad to think that that has no bearing really on how good your product is or service is. Now, it should all be connected, but it isn't truly rooted in anything sort of factual necessarily. It's fascinating. And I think the other thing that can be really surprising for businesses is when they analyze just how much of their, when you think about businesses doing the demand capture motion and how poor the conversion rates through the pipeline are, and then when you start to pick that apart and you see just how much of your existing pipeline and revenue is coming from things like word of mouth and not from lead generation, it can be really quite surprising. But it all connects back to the fact that buyers are out there all the time. They don't just materialize when they need something. They are building this shortlist all the time, all the while. And it drives so much of the final outcome.
Yeah. To give some practical examples in here, which I think is useful, most B2B marketers have done some form of LinkedIn advertising at some point because of the great targeting capabilities there are.
Yeah.
But so many ads are performance-driven ads that are, you're in our ICP, book a demo with us. Here's why you should book a demo because we've got these features, etc. It does nothing for the actual connection, the meaning or relation back to the buying triggers or the category entry points that buyer will go on.
Yeah.
So that just means that they're seeing that ad and they're forgetting it straight away, if they ever come into market. But if you use research and we've spoken about it many times, but buyer intelligence from sales calls will identify category entry points, will identify buying triggers. And if you then use those buying triggers, category entry points, and map your messaging directly to those for your ads, then what you're doing is building up mental availability to associate pain point, category entry point with your brand.
Yeah.
Your brand is becoming the answer or the connection to that thing, that pain point, that category entry point.
Yeah.
And if they are seeing that over a period of time at the right frequency, then ultimately that mental model is going to be associated with your brand and you will make it onto the shortlist. Or you're more likely to.
You can certainly increase your
You're
odds.
increasing your chance,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Advertising rooted in category entry points, although not directly word for word explaining them, I think it's important to retain, you need to iterate, you need to create messaging, you need to, try new ways of positioning that. But that is one way to use advertising in a way that is consistent with how buyers use that platform, how that platform rewards and prioritizes and deprioritizes content, and increases the likelihood that you'll be, the winning vendor of a deal with far less effort at some point in the future.
Yeah, exactly. And we touched on events as well, didn't we? And
yes, we did.
Kind of said about the ability to recognize where an event sits in the kind of life cycle
in the 95/5 ultimately. Is an event going to be attended predominantly, almost exclusively by people who are out of market for you,
which a trade show would be.
Exactly. So a trade show organized by your industry, somebody in your industry, where you have no control over the attendance, high number of them, by definition that's going to be an out of market predominantly. Yes, you'll probably represents the actual 95.5%. You'll meet customers of yours, you'll meet people who are in pipeline, you'll meet one or two people who are in market, but the majority are not by far.
And that goes back to then, what do you do at that event? What does your stand say? What does your booth say? What do you say at the booth?
Yeah, exactly. What outcome are you trying to drive? What's your sort of KPI for that event? If it's an event which is a trade show and the majority of buyers are out of market, focusing everything on how many in-market buyers you can turn into pipeline is likely to be Sub.
You're forcing them in market. You're trying to force them in market before they're ready.
Yeah.
But if you actually focus on how do I build a connection with this person? How do I ingrain our brand within them? And that includes follow up afterwards and how you handle that. For example, we sponsored Inbound in 2024.
23 bottle right
Yeah,
there.
that's right. And we've had people come back like at the end of last year saying they heard about us
Yes,
at Inbound. Like,
absolutely.
the brand association can last a long time if you are intentional with the way you want to build that relationship.
Yeah, and especially if you then show up in other places that those buyers go, and do their research. They're on YouTube, they're listening to podcasts, they're in Google, etc., 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 which we obviously do. But that event is an opportunity to create to get exposure to in-market buyers, whether they come and talk to you or not. Even right, you're just being seen by a lot of them.
Yeah,
it's an effective way to start that process or add to that process, unlike an event, for example, where you're the organizer and you have complete control over who attends, and you can decide whether that's going to be focused on your in-market opportunities or people who are close to revenue, or you're doing something that's out of market too. But there you can decide who you're targeting and you can build your event around that.
Yeah, and having the goal in mind for that as well is really important, and not trying too hard to blend the two and make something that will work for everybody, because usually that works for nobody.
Exactly. You've just reminded me. I can remember situations where the goal for an event was how many business cards can we collect?
That still happens though.
It's kind of funny, isn't it? Because it's it's a numbers thing that when you track it through doesn't convert to pipeline at anything like a reasonable rate. But it's kind of funny how that is still a concept.
Yeah.
Maximize the number of business cards you can collect for people, regardless of what that means.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy. Where do you see intent data fitting into this? So
an interesting topic that we've talked about a lot too. Intent data is obviously a way to get the identity of companies and people who are allegedly in market. But that's it, right? That is all it does. That is all it allows you to do. You can now target those people with a message, but they are still coming in market with a shortlist. They are still coming in market with a shortlist that may or may not feature or include you. And your message will therefore either be a timely reach out from a already quite highly rated or preferred vendor, or just a cold piece of spam that probably, statistically isn't going to get a response or result from them. So intent data is interesting, but it's not a silver bullet solution, right? It doesn't turn your marketing from in-market demand capture to out-of-market preference building at all. It's a way of fighting over more of the 5% if you're not on the shortlist, or being really smart and timely about communicating with people where you are on the shortlist potentially, I think is how I stand on it.
I agree. It comes back to the point that nothing works in isolation, and often people will invest in an intent data and database tool as this kind of silver bullet. The fact that we can now identify exactly which businesses are coming into market, and even the right contacts to contact at the right moment in time based on when they move into market. As if then all of a sudden, just because they've moved into market, they are looking for vendors straight away. But we know that 90% of that cohort already have their shortlist ready for them.
Such a good point.
Intent data that I've seen is actually good.
It
is actually quite good at identifying accounts that are moving into market, surprisingly good actually, that I found. But it still doesn't work in isolation. It still requires great outbound messaging, great marketing and brand awareness in other channels to build up that resonance with you, that memory with you, that connection, that association. All of those things have to work together, and to think that outbound and intent data can just work itself in isolation, I haven't haven't seen it.
It's something that I think about from time to time is how in some situations there's a phenomenon of marketing becoming sales. So a business that's sort of done cold outbound prospecting and grown off the back of it for some time, will no doubt, from time to time think about their conversion rate and think, wow, it's low, right? We generate thousands and thousands of contacts in companies. We do tens of thousands of activities. The conversion rate to revenue and pipeline is going to be low. And it's not unusual to see businesses that have, grown that way sort of move out into intent data as a way of trying to improve the conversion rate on those same activities because it's aimed at warm buyers who are in market, but also quite often push that onto marketing as a strategy to execute. And I'm not a fan of it because I think, like you said, there's much more to effective sales and marketing led growth, which is not about getting marketing to do things that look a lot like sales but at scale, if they are not also at the very least doing marketing that is contributing to out of market awareness, mental availability, shortlist presence, because then whether it's marketing doing the intent data sourcing and the messaging or it's sales, it's going to have probably a bigger impact, an outsized impact compared to just tacking on intent data to try and improve outbound conversion rates without working to build what comes before it.
And the shift that's required here all comes back to mindset within the organization, what the role is of marketing and sales, measurement behind it, like what is the true goal here, like what are we truly trying to achieve at the end, and how do we put the metrics in place that are the right ones to get a positive outcome at the bottom line for the business.
Completely.
And then how you go about allocating budget and resource accordingly, like to not over-index in the wrong areas that are so heavily weighted to highly. There's a reason why Google ads are so expensive, because businesses that favor measurement are all competing over the same tiny proportion of market that's actually getting smaller, by the way, to bring those into their business.
Now there's always a lot of resistance, there's always a lot of skepticism in the marketing world, and so I always think about, well, we say these things and we advocate for these things, but where's the justification for that, right? If it works as well as we claim, then wouldn't we all be stratospheric? And I think it's really important to think about the fact that these techniques, these tactics have value, have purpose, because you can typically always see the significant gap in the conversion rate from the type of buyer that's come to you as a result of you being on their shortlist, them being anonymous until the point of high intent, versus anything else you can do. But you've got to think about how quickly or how soon can you realistically shift the balance, shift the scales to the point where investments over here outperform investments over there. Alice DeCourcy at Cognizant was a brilliant case study on this, because she moved the organizational barriers. She changed the go-to-market and proved that by aligning to this type of buyer, you can exceed pipeline generation from other sources. We at Blend generate excellent numbers of inquiries without doing one drop of lead generation, really, and without doing heaps of high cost in-market demand capture activity, if that's how I could summarize it.
Like high paid costs, actually.
Now we offer a complex high cost service, so we don't convert all of that into pipeline and then we have to deliver it. We're a services business, not a software business, but this part of our go to market works incredibly well, and we see it working incredibly well elsewhere. But there are barriers, there are blockers, there are resistance, and it does take a lot of effort to change this, but it works. It is the way to go. And the data from Gartner about how many deals go to people on the shortlist should just be the wake up call for us all, because it's to go after 10% when there's 90% at play. It's mad.
and that's 10% of 5% of the overall market anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So this is definitely something to look hard at, look carefully at, and it produces a lot more satisfaction as well, because you don't just get analytics out of this, you get real customers who you can then talk to and find out more about your market.
Exactly that. Yeah, it's a feedback loop ultimately, isn't it? Because you get the customers that have come to you because you made it onto their shortlist. And we go back to the buyer intelligence point, but if you're then analyzing, calls and reasons why they came to you in the first place, well, that is just more ammunition to go and do those things again and again. And it's just,
and it's that you're absolutely right. And this is the positive feedback loop that marketers need, because the feedback loop is quite often negative. We're not satisfied with the results. Optimize, scrutinize. And I see businesses as well. I talk to businesses that use HubSpot or Salesforce, and I see them put quite a lot of analytical effort into identifying the bad seeds and like reject them and take them out of the list and suppress that. And I'm like, all your effort's going on this bad stuff. Forget it. Put all the effort on the good stuff. Focus on the people who do want to buy from you. Like, you can't change the fact that they don't want to, or that they are the wrong audience, or that they came via the wrong channel. But a lot of effort goes into sort of weeding that stuff out. I'm all for having a clean CRM, but you can take it too far. A positive feedback loop, which is based on achievement and success, that would be really great for marketers.
Absolutely, without a doubt. All right. Any other kind of examples or points we want to bring up?
Well, I mean, I think we talk about AI all the time. I think AEO is a vital channel to consider, and you can think about AEO a number of ways. It's used informationally, it's used commercially. There are citations and there are mentions. It probably isn't going to have a significant impact on pre-market mental availability, because people aren't hanging out on AI and sort of like,
well, speak for yourself.
They're not using it in the way that they use social channels or communities or just day-to-day activity, but it fits in the go-to-market in the way that you optimize for being on a shortlist and then acting on it. And I think that's something to simply decide how you use it that's in context of this discussion, this advice, which is be building your shortlist presence, and use marketing wisely to capture it when they're in market.
This is purely just a hunch. I have no research or data to back this up whatsoever, but I believe that more and more buyers will use AI for shortlisting as opposed to traditional search, because of the ease to create the shortlist.
They absolutely will. They'll use it for the formal part of shortlisting. But if you're already on the shortlist mentally, and you're on the shortlist that AI puts together, wow,
you're winning.
You've got a huge opportunity again. So there is a point of connection there. You're absolutely right, which is why being mentioned when people perform commercial type queries within AI is is the way to go about it, and is a very powerful way to connect with the shortlist if you're already there. I mean, that's a super opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. All right, cool. Well,
cool.
Shall we wrap it up there?
Yes, let's do that.
Do you want words of wisdom at the end?
No final words of wisdom. No, that was a good discussion. I think we covered a lot there. And so, I don't think I've got anything else to add, but it's a fascinating area with huge potential. And I am just really suddenly inspired by this idea of giving marketers something positive to build on. As opposed to the scrutiny and the negativity that goes around, unsatisfactory performance. So
that's a good positive note to end on.
A good end note. Yeah, agreed.
All right, cool. Let's wrap it up there. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Demand Decoded. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks all.
What time would be your ideal time to start school and end school?
So, well, I would say 9:30, and then end at. Hold on, let me just work out. So we start at 8:40. So that would be putting us 50 minutes ahead. Yeah, 15 minutes ahead. So that would be, we would end at 3.
Oh, so a shorter day.
No,
Oh, no.
no, we would end at 3, so I'm still working it out. 3, no, 4, we would end at 4. Oh,
Okay, a bit of
4.
a later day.
Yeah, 4. And then you come home, and then, yeah, I think that would be good.
All right. Well, if there are any government bodies listening
Yeah.
and, want to take Sam's inspiration there, then please do. And if you made it this far into the episode, this, by the way, is Phil's son, Sam, who has taken his seat whilst Phil has stood up
Yeah.
at the other side. So thanks for that, Sam. And we'll get you on for a full episode, I think.
Okay, yeah. I think
What would be your topic of choice?
Oh, okay.
If you could host your own podcast on any topic.
I would talk about like the influence that AI is having in like even just like in the world that kids grow up in, and like how we use it at school and how it's like changing everything. And because also like you see all these adverts for AI to help you with your homework, like why is this being promoted? And yeah, so I'd probably talk about that.
Love that. I actually think we can make that happen.
That'd be a great
I was expecting like, Fortnite tips and tricks, but AI, yeah,
Yeah.
love that. Well,
And what it has on, like, and the help it has on revising for tests. Because when we have to revise for tests, they put it in, like, an app where they set all the homework. Then it'll give you some notes to revise on. And what I do is you can just copy and paste it into ChatGPT, and it will give you notes to revise on. And that's really helpful. So, yeah.
stay tuned. New podcast landing soon.
Yeah. Oh, there's the camera.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Before you go, if all you can think about right now is AI search and how buyers are using it to find products in your category, we should talk. At Blend, we've built a proven framework for answer engine optimization. We tested it on ourselves first and saw 470 high-value prompt appearances, 80% citation rate, and a whopping 250% increase in AI source leads. That's real high-intent leads who are finding us through AI search. We've since rolled it out to dozens of clients who are now seeing similar results. Our AI service engineers your visibility in ChatGPT, Perplexity, AI mode, Gemini through structured content, schema markup, and continuous optimization, and measurement through our partner Scrunch. If you want to show up when your buyers are asking AI tools for recommendations in your category, find out more about our AEO services at blendb2b.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.